I have an issue that I think the board should be aware of, and I've sent emails on this. Whenever you get into elections, there's constitutional issues involved, and they're very serious, and there's lots of case law out there regarding elections and how there's gerrymandering and there's different things. One concern I've had, kind of for a while, is that generally constitutional law says that one person equals one vote.
Davis versus Carr.
Reynolds, yes.
Oh, the Reynolds?
Yeah. In 1964, that's where the Supreme Court came down and said that this is the deal. And everybody thought that that's okay, that's it. One person, one vote, everybody's going to follow that. There are some minor exceptions to that.
And a major exception.
Yeah.
The Senate, U.S. Senate.
Yeah, yeah. As it relates to us, there are two water district cases. One of them is the Tulare case, which is a California water district where these farmers owned land and they said only the farmers could vote. And the other residents of a nearby community said, hey, we want to have a vote. It went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court said, no, we're only going to allow these farmers to vote because they're the people that essentially are funding this water district.
And that
Chief Justice Rehnquist wrote the opinion on that. It was actually a 4-3 split, so this was, a hotly debated issue. But the facts of that case, I think, are somewhat distinguishable to our case. In that particular case, no additional services were provided other than providing water to these various lands, and that's all that was involved. There were no common residents that were living in the same area and being charged for use of water. I happen to think that this is a very significant issue. I think it's very significant. I question, based on my reading of Tulare, whether because we're now addressing it, I think we need to look at it very carefully and make sure that we are following the law, making sure we keep the district in a good and safe position.
And I've studied a little bit too, and not that I have a legal mind or anything, but I think this is a case where it's a little different than one vote, where two parties have brought an asset to and the vote was broken up by the amount of asset brought to the table. So.
Yeah, I certainly agree that our situation is not the typical,
Right, it's not like Overton Power, which faced this years ago,
Yeah, it's not like that, because that benefits the entire community,
right.
And everybody's spending money and paying for that, whether they're a tenant. Land ownership isn't
right.
a unique characteristic. So, and I'm glad, Rich, because I'd like to. I think some of these issues really need to be fleshed out, because, in my opinion, I don't think we're going to find a black and white, crystal clear answer on this issue.
No.
But I think we need to put ourselves in the best position possible to make sure that we're following what the constitutional law is.
Are you talking about Bunkerville having 2 votes with 2,000 people versus Mesquite having 3 votes with
I'm just talking
20,000 people?
I'm just talking any time you get into a situation where it's something other than the general rule, which is one person, one vote. Representative government is just this, this very, I guess, sacred, thing that everybody gets their vote. I'm saying that we need to keep that in mind, as if there's going to be a change to this, we need to keep that in mind, because I'm not so certain that.
Well, Bobby's a farmer from Bunkerville. Let me answer his question. Yeah, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, I don't know how.
For a lot more detail.
We're not really
yeah,
changing any of that though. That already is how it is. We're just changing how they're appointed.
What he's talking about is the legality of the entire issue, though.
So
Yeah.
maybe it's illegal already.
Maybe, but
I
I
didn't really know where everybody was going with all of this. I mean, I've heard some things. I didn't know where the board was going to go. I had anticipated some of the things that were said, but I just think it's an issue we need to get right, and we need to be careful in the way that we do it. And whatever the board my only job here is gonna be whatever the board wants to do, I just wanna make sure that it's legal, we're okay.
Anything can be challenged.
Yeah.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Oh, I turned that off, I'm sorry.
I should too.
I mean, they get a pay cut.
I was not going to add anything to this because it's really up to the board to decide, but I do have an ethical thing that I'd like to just make sure that
What was that word?
ethical
Say it one more time. Okay.
is that in no case, if the conformance with this law to the letter, I think in no case should any party be unrepresented. Is that, I think that all minorities have a right to representation. And that's, I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Who do you feel is not being represented?
Well, if we're to look at the racial population as one person to one vote, then Bunkerville is only 1/10 the size of Mesquite, or 1/5, whatever it is, 7 to 1. But I think that.
Well, you made it sound like a civil rights deal, like some
Well,
minority groups not being represented.
I think it's ethically that is true, is that, there should always be representation. Even if to conform to this, ratios change, I think it would never be right to not have Bunkerville represented. I don't think the board would ever do that. I feel strongly.
Nobody's even suggesting that.
Actually, this
Well, with the
brings up the
breeder.
issue.
Well, no, let me be clear just so that there's no misunderstanding. What I'm saying is the general rule is one person, one vote. There are exceptions to that. In one particular case involving a water district, the court found that there was a valid exception to that, and they weren't going to enforce this one person, one vote. I think the question is our situation analogous to this one? Are we in the same position as what the Supreme Court said in this case as to this water district, or are we substantially different? If we're like this water district, then I think whatever the board wants to do, I think is great.
And that's the way I see it. I think, I see it that way, and I think we move forward. Somebody wants to challenge it, of course, that's what the courts are for. But as far as what people want, what's set up, I think, once again, it's apples and apples and oranges, and I think we're a unique case here.
Hasn't the legislation already ruled on that? I mean, it is how it is.
They did back in 1993, and I don't know what the population was back in 1993. I don't know if that was in conformance.
It was done on water basis.
Yeah.
The population split was probably about the same.
As it is now.
Yeah, I've been
No.
pretty
No.
close.
A
lot closer.
It was,
Mosquito.
Oh.
in '93, they were probably about 10,000, 8,000.
It looks like in
1990,
1990, the census shows 1,960 people in Mesquite and 750 people in
So
Bunkerville.
2 to 1.
Talking about how much water came in.
Yeah.
I know you guys are talking about water, I
We're
know.
talking about
Yeah,
population.
and that's an issue. I mean, that's exactly the issue. In this particular case, these guys were the ones that owned the farmland. They contributed the farmland, they paid for all of the water. So the court found, yeah, if you're gonna pay for it and you guys are gonna provide all the land and nobody else is gonna be impacted, of course we're gonna say that you guys have a vote. By the way, I think that decision is absolutely right on.
And that was probably the basis that it was set up the way that it was.
It may have been, and with those numbers, I actually think that kind of makes sense as to why this issue wasn't potentially raised in '93. I don't know, you guys may not have any interest in this, but I'm sometimes very surprised by how knowledgeable the community is, and I would invite you guys to look at this case, this Tulare case. It's from 1973. It's Salyer Land, S-A-L-Y-E-R Land, and I'll give a copy to anybody who wants it. Salyer Land versus Tulare, T-U-L-A-R-E, Water District, United States Supreme Court, and I'm glad the issue's coming out, and I'm glad there's going to be good discussion on it. I hope there continues to be good discussion on it and input.
And I think if you did the Reynolds versus Carr, is that?
That's the 1964 case, which said one person, one vote, and it made it essentially sacred. And nobody thought you would ever have a situation where that wouldn't apply, but there's another case, the Avery case, where they said, well, there could be some situation, and when they got to this case, they said, this is the situation we thought of back in Avery where something like this could occur.
One of the other things I'd like to make sure we look at is that it defines our actual area. And the city has taken down additional land since this was done. We need to make sure that all of that information in here is correct so that
You're talking section 1 of the charter.
it gives you our actual service area.
Yeah.
And it gives Bunkerville, then it gives Mesquite's. And Bunkerville, because Bunkerville Township hasn't changed any, I would imagine Bunkerville
Oh, we've changed.
hasn't.
Yeah.
The service area though hasn't changed. I think all the area that's been added was still within our service area that was
Yeah,
allowed in
I think
'93.
some of the area
It
that
was
was
BLM land that
Bunkerville
was
is
taken
now
down
Mesquite.
and added to.
So it was contemplated that additional land might occur, so the district
We'll have to
was made
verify
bigger
that,
than.
but I'm,
I'd just like to make sure we look at it and make sure that is correct.
Town boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, this is talking about running south approximately 15 miles along the section lines of the southeast. I mean, this is talking about a pretty big area, so I think what you're saying.
The original.
Aaron,
Did you
is right.
It even takes into consideration scenic Arizona.
Yeah, it does talk about Arizona in here and our
that's a good point.
right to service Arizona.
In fact, here's a section that goes,
And import water from Arizona.
a section that goes all the way 28 miles, more or less, a point in the north-south boundary. So yeah, I think our geographic service area is actually,
Well, that would be from.
The Arizona one was brought up, and
from the
then-
Arizona line.
Yeah.
I think there's a part of near the Carp Elgin exit that changed from Virgin Valley to Moapa Valley.
Wappa Township.
So that might.
Well, it probably is, but. Okay. Is there any other comments or suggestions or? No more input. Okay. Does the board have any other comments?
No, but my only comment is I appreciate everybody coming out and giving us their input and hope that we can proceed with, on that. And I think it was all good input and I appreciate your time.
Let's listen to Ken's
Would you like me to carry it back and see?
agenda.
Okay, I got 6 things. First one, retain ratio of 3 representatives from Mesquite and 2 from Bunkerville. All 5 members are elected, none appointed. Stagger elected members, 4 years per member. 12-year term limit to conform to state law on consecutive service.
I don't know that we need
Yeah, we
to
don't
put
have to
that, I don't think we need to put that.
we're gonna be
in the
subject to it
charter.
regardless.
Yeah.
Okay. Remove pay from the charter and make it settable by the board for the next term, established by ordinance by VVWD. And then check into the definition of the VVWD service area, and make sure it is still accurate or reshaped as appropriate.
What about the salary thing? You're gonna,
We're gonna take it
Pull
out.
that
but-
out.
Pull it out
Pull it out.
and make it established by.
Well, we're gonna
an
discuss
ordinance.
it
Yeah.
at the next meeting. I don't
No,
know.
we're gonna pull it out.
well, we'll
Before it
discuss
goes
all
to
this
legislation.
again.
Well, we're gonna vote on it next meeting, I don't know that we are gonna pull it out. but
Well,
it'll
I
be
guess
part
the
of
challenge
Well,
I
that's
have
just
is if
The
it goes.
suggestions, and then after the meeting is discussed, then
Right.
we'll have the final.
Yeah, if Bo and I integrate this into the charter with some help from Aaron on the borders.
Well, you know, this gotta go to the next meeting and be voted on.
Absolutely, we wanna put the charter before you proposed, and I just wanna make sure I got your suggestion.
Okay, all right, me.
And you can reshape it.
Well, my suggestion, take the 80 out, but apparently these 2 gentlemen are in favor of it. I think if you make it too easy to change your salary gets changed easily, so.
Yeah, what are you guys suggesting you change it to?
We're not.
At what point?
Did you hear that we want to be able to change it, but it wouldn't be effective till the next?
Right, it won't be effective until the next one. The next term. The next
So
term.
by taking it out of the charter, it makes it easier to have it changed. It doesn't have to go before the state.
The only way we can change the charter now is by legislation, which is a long drawn out, as you're aware of.
Is that to benefit the community, or who's that to benefit, taking that out? What's your
Board members,
big push on
we're
that
getting
one?
paid.
Probably the only benefit to the
It could benefit the
community.
community because more people may want
Yeah.
to serve
That's
on
what
the
I was
board.
gonna say.
The problem is, we don't get anybody running for the water board. Look at the pitiful selection you got this year.
Hey, hey, hey. I was
You
pointing.
guys are always in the
Oh,
paper.
don't blame me on the voters, they appointed me, so.
However, interestingly enough, when you're looking at, the power board and they pay $500 a meeting versus $80 for the water district, they
They-
have the same problem. They don't have
They,
people sign up.
they ran opposed how
Have a
many
lot of
times?
people
Just
sign up.
But look at Judge
Which I think that's
Dodd's,
gonna change.
look at Judge
Real
Dodd's
soon.
position. Nobody ever ran against him.
Oh, yeah, they have.
And-
No, they've run
They
against
ran
it.
That pays good money.
Well, it does now, but it didn't used to.
Just as a piece?
Yeah, it didn't pay, it was pitiful. And
So
nobody
anyway,
ran. and
that would
now
be
we
the
have-
only benefit, really.
Yeah.
I don't care if we just leave it 80 myself or whatever.
It used to be 16 grand and you could drive as fast as you wanted.
Yeah, that's right.
That's worth more than 80 to me.
I want that position.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of big boards that people in Mesquite serve on and down in Vegas, and a good example of that might be the health district, which is a very large entity in Park County, obviously, and board members from Mesquite who serve on that receive 0. So just not all boards pay. A lot of it's done because people want to be involved.
Well, it's supposed to be that way. People are supposed to step up and say, okay, I'll do my share of it.
Yeah, we don't owe you people anything for
That's
sitting
right.
up there.
Yeah. But sometimes it's hard to get people
Well,
to step up to
A
bat.
vote of thanks.
You owe me $80 the, meeting.
You keep arguing and I'll take that away from you.
Good luck, it's in the charter.
So anyway. Okay, if there's no further comment or public input, then we'll go ahead and call this meeting adjourned at 5:50.